I'm Jim Taylor, live in Scripps Ranch, California, a part of San Diego. I've been in San Diego now 30 years and in California since 1988. And that's who I am.
I came to know you through Toastmasters. So could you introduce Toastmasters for people who doesn't know Toastmasters at all? How would you introduce it?
Okay, so Toastmasters is an international organization whose goal is to help you with public speaking and leadership. Been around for, very close to 100 years. They're everywhere in the world. There are probably, for example, 130 or so clubs in San Diego alone. And San Diego is just one little portion of all of the clubs worldwide. So, excellent organization. I've been a member 30 years now. In November 1st, it will be 30 years. And I've been in about 5 or 6 clubs over those years, different kinds of clubs. And it's been great. I recommend it for anyone who doesn't live on a planet all by yourself. Meaning that if you ever connect with anybody, even one-on-one, you probably could use some ideas on better communication skills. And Toastmasters is a very practical thing. And it's a go at your own pace. It's not a curriculum that someone puts on you and you have to follow it. You decide at what pace you go. You can go rapidly fast or take your time. Wonderful program.
What clubs that you are a member of right now?
Currently, I'm a member of 3 clubs, one of which is somewhat inactive, but Hard Hats, Improvicus, and Scripps Teasers are the 3 clubs I'm in. Very active with Scripps Teasers, attending every week. Improvicus, kind of the same, every Saturday morning, but Hard Hats, not so much.
I know you are Distinguished Toastmaster. Could you introduce that? What is the Distinguished DTM
Well, like many places, there are varying levels that you can attain as you progress through the educational process. I don't know how many there are, probably 6 or 7. So as you accomplish certain tasks and move along in your speaking and leadership, you attain certain levels. And the DTM, or Distinguished Toastmaster, is the highest level there is in Toastmasters.
When did you get DTM?
It probably took me about 7 years. So I joined November 1st of 93. So 2000, the year 2000 is when I accomplished DTM.
What was the year?
I think it was 2000 approximately.
Mm-hmm. How did you feel when you got the DTM?
Oh, it's great. I mean, it's not easy. There's a lot of work involved. Even though the educational program has been completely overhauled at least once or twice in my 30 years, it looks like the challenge is the same in terms of what you've got to do. Especially on the leadership side, there's a project, sponsoring a new club. There's all kinds of things involving leadership that are a real challenge. And then, of course, there's the speaking track. We've got to accomplish so many speeches during that process as well. So DTM is a challenge. I think someone said less than 1% of all Toastmasters have achieved DTM.
Less than 1%? I'm
not sure that's accurate, but I know there aren't many. Although I was in one club, Hard Hats, where there had to be 13 or 14 DTMs. And in our club, we've got 2 for sure.
We got Jen, we got you, we got Nico, just recently achieved DTM.
Did he get his DTM?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm going to get mine probably next month.
All right, great. We'll have 4.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah.
And you guys will get yours are a lot faster than 7 years. Sounds like yours is going to be what, 3, 4, 5 years, something like that?
5 years for
5.
me.
That's fast. Mm-hmm. I think I remember one Toastmaster. Her name is Mindy Davis. I don't know if you know Mindy.
I know her.
She got her DTM in something like 3 years, but she gave a speech like twice a month.
Oh.
And she did the leadership things, all at once almost.
Have you ever participated in any speech contest?
I have. I don't think it's a big issue for me to be in contest, but the one I'm most proud of is in 2015, I got into the table topics contest, which is an improvisational process, and I won all the way to the District 5 level and won the District 5 contest
Wow.
in 2015. And occasionally I'll get into a speech contest. I got into the recent international speech contest, and I got to the area level, and that's as far as I went.
How was the experience of winning the champion of table topics in the district?
Yeah, it's anytime you win anything, it's always gratifying to think that you could beat other people in anything. So it was great, and it was a very good experience. Mm-hmm. Okay, here's a trophy from 2015 when I won the District 5 Table Topics Contest. That's something like the 4th level of contests that begin at the club level and go all the way to the district.
Oh, this is the district champion trophy? Oh.
There it is.
Oh, I got one, no, not champion. I got one of the 3rd place for international.
Okay.
It wasn't as good as this one.
Every year they change what they give you. This is what I got in 2015.
Oh, I like this one.
It's solid gold, by the way. Well, maybe not.
I wish to. I know you're a charter member of Improv Toastmasters Club. What's unique about this club?
Improvicus varies a lot from the standard Toastmaster formula. A typical Improvicus meeting has 3 pieces. One, we start off with what's called an Improvicus moment. It's your description of the experience you've had in the past week, where you could have said no thank you to something, but instead you said, yes, I can do that. That's the Improvicus moment. Second piece are games we play, and there's about 25 different improv type games. And then third are what we call scenes. A director calls on 2 people and gives you a setting, and the 2 people act out the setting for about 60, 90 seconds, something like that. So that's the Improvicus format, which is very different from a standard Toastmaster meeting. Now, occasionally we have normal speeches, which are after the 60-minute meeting. And people can still do speeches also.
And what kind of people do you think that should join that club?
Well, it's pretty much like Toastmasters. I don't know that there's a limiter. I guess anybody who's not sure how they would do in an extemporaneous setting, and they want to get better at responding quickly. It's a workout. It really is. So almost anybody. I don't think I would limit myself. You could say it's for people that are a little more experienced, but that's not really true either. I've known people that come in there cold, and yeah, you might struggle a little bit in the beginning, but it's no different than regular Toastmasters. Everybody that begins is nervous or not sure, and then as you get your confidence muscle building, things start to get easier.
Mm-hmm. Being part of Toastmaster for 30 years, how would you say Toastmaster helped you either in your life or at your work?
That's a great question. I think, it's helped me everywhere. For example, I got into theater because I was in Toastmasters, and I've been directing plays at North Park's Playwright Festival every fall for the past 5 years. That came about as a result of a connection with Toastmasters. For example, I got into TEDx because of Toastmasters. So it's opened doors for me, as well as enhanced my ability to be comfortable in front of any audience, whether it's 10 people or 1,000 people. I'm completely confident because I've done it so often, it feels usual, ordinary almost.
I know some people, after they have been Toastmaster for a few years, maybe they have achieved the DTM, and then they feel they have achieved their goals from Toastmaster, so that they could graduate it from Toastmaster, so they leave and then just go on with their lives. So I'm wondering, what keeps you in Toastmaster for so long and also continuing being part of Toastmaster?
Great question. I think, to me, I see Toastmasters like going to the gym. You don't get to a place where you stop because you feel like you're in shape. Because as soon as you feel that way, and you stop, you start to fall out of condition, right? So Toastmasters to me is one of those lifelong things that you're constantly learning. Every time you see or hear something, you say, wow, what a great idea that is. It just never ends to me. I don't care. The designations might be an achievement level, but there's no such thing as finished. You're done. It's like saying, I am the very best communicator I can be, so I'm done. It just doesn't happen that way. Mm-hmm. It takes continuous attention. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't mean the same intensity throughout your Toastmaster career. I mean, there might be a point where you start to taper off a little bit more. You might do more coaching and more evaluating and helping other people, which is kind of what I've been doing the last 5 or 10 years, more so than speaking. When you're first starting, you're speaking more than you are later on. Mm-hmm. So it changes.
Okay. And so you're still getting something from Toastmaster?
Absolutely. I don't think I would be there if I didn't feel like something good is happening, mm-hmm. and I'm growing. I mean, it's a constant growth curve. And for me, it doesn't end.
As an experienced Toastmaster, what advice would you give to a new Toastmaster member?
I guess it's 2 words: do it. Meaning, get up there. You'll overcome that apprehension pretty early on in your first couple of speeches. And then after a while, you start to feel more comfortable. You start to spread out and expand. Your movements increase. Your language gets better. It's just like anything else. The more you do it, the better you get, especially with evaluating and coaching. If you have a mentor and or an evaluator giving you feedback, you'll see things or hear things you may not have seen before and say, oh yeah, you're right, I do that. And you try to do something new. So it's constantly molding and remolding yourself.
Just do it and continue.
Keep doing it. Get on stage as often as you can. Get up there. As I was telling the new guy, Ignatius, today, when are you going to give that icebreaker? I got a little work I got to do. So, encouragement, I guess, is what some people need to get started. And then once you're started, a little more encouragement, you get the second one, the third one, the fourth one, and then you're comfortable now. Mm-hmm. And that varies a lot between people. I have seen some people take quite a while to get comfortable. That's not the norm, though. I'd say normally a few speeches and people get moderately comfortable. In our club, you see people get up there like Melan. She's not afraid. She gets up frequently. New person, Denise, same thing. They're getting up there pretty often, giving those speeches, getting more comfortable. You can see them relaxing a little more. Mm-hmm. And when people relax, they open up. Mm-hmm. People wonder, they say, I don't know if I have any stories. Everybody has stories. I don't care if it's the first pet you ever had, or your first girlfriend or boyfriend, or what you learned in grade school. They're all good stories. You just don't think they are, but they are.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned encouraging people. Do you see any balance that we have to make when encouraging people? Sometimes if we encourage too much, maybe they feel pressured, intimidated. How would you balance those?
That's always a challenge, is to know what that perfect point is. What's the balance point between encouragement and pushing? Mm-hmm. I think you just have to ask the person you're working with how they feel. And hopefully you've gained enough honesty with them, and they'll tell you, I need to slow down, or I need to take a break. They'll give you feedback. Mm-hmm. Or you can sense in their body language, hey, you're pushing too hard, or this may be more than I can do. Just tell them to back off on the pace. Remember, there's no Toastmaster pace. Some people I know people in Toastmasters 20 years. They're not DTMs. It's just not for them. They don't want to do the leadership part, which is hard. For example, that's okay. There's no requirement for anyone to go at any certain pace. So sometimes people have to be reminded. So, there's a fine place in there between encouragement and pushing. Mm-hmm. So as the organizer of a whitewater rafting trip every year, the weekend after Father's Day, about 25 of us would go up to Northern California and do a rigorous whitewater rafting trip. Here's a picture. And on my last trip, number 10, I went out of the raft into the freezing cold river. Down I went underneath the boat, came up on the other side, and the water was freezing. So everybody said, this may be our last trip. And that was it. That was the South Fork of the Kern River.
Was you with yourself or with your family member?
My son is in here somewhere, along with a bunch of friends, and occasionally people that I don't know who are friends of friends.
When did you do it?
Maybe 20 years ago or so.
When you were still working?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. It was a weekend trip.
Okay. So we talked about your Toastmaster journey. If you're okay with it, I'd like to talk about a little bit about your life journey.
Sure.
And could you share about brief introduction about your life journey? How old are you?
I am 80.
80.
80 years old in January.
And where were you born?
I'm from New Jersey, born in Camden, New Jersey.
And did you grow up there?
I did. And at 17, I joined the Navy.
And any other place you have lived?
I've lived all over. Not for any extensive periods. I've lived 3 months over here, 4 months over there. Before I came to San Diego, I lived in Los Angeles for 13 years. And that was my first California location. And before that, mostly in New Jersey. Of course, the Navy, you're all over the place.
And what kind of jobs have you took?
Early on, I was in electronics because that's what the Navy trained me in. When I got out of the Navy, I went to work for IBM in the days when computers filled up giant rooms. And they weren't that solid. They weren't reliable. So people had to go in there, diagnose, and fix them. So that's what IBM trained me to do. After a few years, I was in charge of other people, and I continued in leadership. And then ultimately, about 15 years in, I got a lot of feedback that says, Jim, I think you'd be better in sales. So I shifted from services oriented to sales. And so for the next 20, 30, 40 years, I was in sales. And then finally, my final career was in coaching. I started coaching as a profession about not that long ago, 15 years ago. And I worked for several coaching companies, and then I did coaching on my own for the past 10 years or so.
I guess you're doing coaching as a profession?
If somebody asked me what my profession was today, it would be coaching. In fact, yesterday someone said, do you do a specific kind of coaching? And I said, yes. Lately, in the last 7 or 8 years, it's speaking coaching. So if you're an executive and you got to give talks every once in a while in your business, and you can use a little help in being more effective, that's what I do.
So you get paid for coaching people?
Well, I do both. I'll do some pro bono work for certain situations where I don't get paid, and then on other cases, I will be paid a fee.
Mm-hmm. Would you consider a retired person or?
Yes, technically I am retired. If there's a form to be filled out and they ask you about your profession, I would check retired.
And when did you retire?
2014, January of 2014. So it'll be 10 years in January.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I was 71 years old, and I celebrated by climbing Mount Kilimanjaro with my son on my birthday when I retired.
Oh, okay. So it's 2014 when you were 71 years old?
Correct.
Why did you decide to retire?
Well, actually, I worked longer than the average person, I guess, if you consider retirement age today as 65 or 66. I loved what I was doing because I was coaching other people. And I got a lot of positive feedback. And I could have done that the rest of my life. But I had all these other things I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. A lot of traveling. I wanted to do that. I wanted to get into other things. So I said, okay, it's time to stop working full time and taper it off. So I continue to have some clients even now, but I'm really retired.
Were you doing sales before you retiring?
Coaching.
Coaching.
For the last 15 years of my working life, I did coaching. Executive coaching, mostly CEOs, C-level people that needed coaching in their businesses.
Mm-hmm. What was your retired life look like? What was a normal day?
Well, I'm on a computer a lot, so I do a lot of computer work, whether it's research, preparation, evaluation, all kinds of things related to the computer. Lots of, well, it's not as many calls as I used to do. I do 4 or 5 Zoom calls a week, either with clients or groups. So nowadays, Zoom is probably more of a primary tool than it used to be. In fact, I used to use something called freeconferencecall.com, but it was only a phone call. It wasn't video. Or Skype. I used Skype a lot when I was doing coaching in the beginning. I had clients all over the world, and I would Skype people in Spain, Guatemala, you name it, China.
Mhm.
I had 2 guys in China. One spoke no English, and his partner spoke English. So I'd get them on the phone every week, and we'd talk, and they'd pause to translate for each other. And that was on Skype. And I don't know whether Skype has video now. They probably do,
They do, yes.
but I think it's fallen way off in popularity compared to Zoom. Zoom seems to have the bulk of the market, even though other companies like Microsoft's got Teams.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's near as popular as Zoom.
I
Zoom,
correct.
Zoom arrived at the right time. They grabbed the market, and they're holding on tight.
Mm-hmm. And do you still do a lot of traveling right now?
No, rarely. In lieu of traveling, which used to be frequent, the traveling I do now for any work-related stuff is very minimal. Zoom can do it.
For leisure, just for fun, you do travel?
Yeah,
for
we
fun?
take 2 or 3 trips a year, often flying. We go to Europe almost every year. This year, though, we're doing domestic things. We're going to Europe, road trip. We love road trips. Utah National Parks in May 1st, as a matter of fact. And then in the fall, we're going to Washington, D.C., because we haven't been there for a long time.
And do you drive most of the time while doing road trip?
We share. Trudy drives half the time. I drive half the time.
Mhm.
And we usually don't drive very long. 300 miles is plenty in a given day.
Mm-hmm.
We go to Utah. We'll go from here to Las Vegas, stop there, got a hotel, going to see a show, and then continue on from there to 2 stops in Utah, come back through Vegas and back home. All these binders are for vacation trips we've taken. We have gone all over the place. France, London, you name it. Costa Rica. I don't have my glasses.
These are planners or pictures?
These are an example of a plan that contains also the hotels and trains and planes, you name it. We take the book with us, and it's our planning book. This one here is for Manhattan. We went to New York for 2 weeks. This is the New York planning book.
Wow.
Okay?
I can see you're super organized.
Well, remember we talked about that a while ago. So I've got, you name it, I've got Costa Rica here, I've got Paris twice. I've been to Paris 5 times. Hawaii. I can't even think of all of them. There's France from last year. So a lot of trips, tons of trips.
Besides coaching, besides Toastmasters, what else do you do?
TEDx.
TEDx.
I'm in 2 TEDx organizations currently. TEDx San Diego and TEDx El Cajon. El Cajon's brand new. They haven't even had an event yet, so we're just getting started. Whereas TEDx San Diego has been around almost 10 years. I've been very active. I'm a speaker coach in TEDx San Diego, and I'm probably a little more than that in the new one because they're relying on some of my other experiences to launch their first event in July.
Mm-hmm.
I am a director of short plays. They're called short plays, 10-minute plays, every year at the North Park Theater. It'll be 6 years this year. I do that. That's kind of a regular ongoing thing that I do. So Toastmasters, TEDx, and theater.
Mm-hmm.
Those 3 things occupy 90% of what I consider to be work. I don't currently have a charity, which I usually do. I usually have some charity I'm doing something for. I've done wheelchairs for wheelchair dancing. I did that for 2 years. And
you coach them, or you stay on the wheelchair?
I was the MC every year.
Oh, okay.
They had a big, annual event. Think of 50 people in wheelchairs with a standing person dancing. That was fascinating. And then I did the prison. I consider that to be charity because there's no pay involved. At first, I did TEDx at the prison.
Mhm.
Then I did a Toastmaster club that I started at the prison. When I say the prison, it's the one local in San Ysidro, which is called Donovan. Donovan Correctional, 3,000 inmates.
You mentioned you're still a speaker coach at TEDx right now, right?
Yes.
As a speaker coach, what is the aspect that most of speakers should improve on?
I think the overall thing is what I call confidence. In the end, if there's one long-term goal, it's how do I get to be super confident? Under that are lots of little things that you need to do that all result in improving your confidence. Once your confidence gets to where you want it to be, your skill will come along with it.
Mm-hmm.
And between having a fairly good level of skill and super confidence, you'll be as good a speaker as you can be.
Mm-hmm. I know in our club, you emphasize a lot about emotion, feeling, and stories. Do you see the same pattern in the TEDx speakers? Do they need to improve on those things?
Absolutely, yes. Most people worry about words, and they believe that words are all you need, when in reality, words need an emotional foundation, and the delivery comes along with the words. So words alone are the beginning of the message, and then how you express that message is the difference between whether it likely will be effective or not. And when I say effective, it starts with, what do you want the listener to do? What's your call to action? Do you want them to believe something? Do you want them to feel something? Do you want them to go tell someone about your message? All of those are possible. So when you're at the beginning of a project to deliver a message, the question should be, what do you want to get out of it? What do you want to accomplish? Do you want to sell something? Do you want to get people excited? Do you want to make them laugh? All of those are possible.
Mm-hmm. And emotions are feelings, and stories are the tools to make that happen, I guess.
Yes. How do I move? How do I get someone to laugh? Not easy. How do I get them to cry? Not easy. But when you can get those things, you're a master.
Do you have a bucket list, and what are on that bucket list?
I do, and I'm the only guy around that you can say has accomplished their number one item, and that was climbing Kilimanjaro.
And you did it.
I did it. Every year I have 3 goals, and they're all measurable. Attend improv at least 40 times a year. Go to the gym 220 times a month, 240 times a year. I log both of those things, okay? And a more recent goal for the past, just prior to the pandemic, is read.
Mm-hmm.
I've been reading over 30 books a year for the past 3 years. I'm going to exceed that again this year. During the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, I think that year I read 36 books that year.
Mm-hmm.
So those 3 things, reading, and I've never been a good reader my whole life. And I've always said, I need to do a better job of reading. And then I got into reading.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
I read mostly fiction because I want to escape. It's like going to the movies. And I read mostly crime or detective type novels by the leading authors in that field.
And what was the book that you gifted the most, or the book that you influenced you the most?
I have a few. That's a hard question because there's so many of them. I think maybe Think and Grow Rich, published a long time ago by
Mm-hmm.
Napoleon Hill, was probably the most influential book. And I think a lot of people would say that. When people discovered this book, published, I think in the 30s or 40s,
Mm-hmm.
they say, wow, there's a lot of very good principles in there. Along the way, though, this is a very good book, The Prophet. And
Is it about religion?
No, it's not religious.
What
It's
is
more, it's a little more philosophical, I would call it.
Okay.
This is a more recent book, bestseller on the New York Times list for many years. called Habit. Habit is very complex and very complicated. This is somewhat of a scientific book, but well worth reading, and I recommend it. And here's a children's book that I've read from. You read it.
The little engine that could.
It's about, as a child, having you believe that anything's possible.
Mm-hmm.
That if you try hard enough, you'll be able to accomplish things that you never thought of you could do. So this is a great book. Every adult should read this book.
I think my son would really love that. He's a fan of all different kinds of vehicles.
So there's at least 4. And if you saw all the books I have in there, there are probably others. But I guess if I had to recommend a book, I would say read this. Napoleon Hill had many other books, but this is the one that he's mostly famous for. Of course, he's been dead for, 40 years, 50 years.
So Think and Grow Rich.
Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill,
Mm-hmm.
to me is probably a must in everybody's list. It has principles like, let me just digress, go the extra mile.
Mm-hmm.
Go the extra mile is one of his 15 or 20 principles. And it means what it sounds like it means. When you think you've done enough, do a little more. IBM adapted that, for example. Always look for something more you can do for the customer.
Mm-hmm.
They would say, when you go out to service a computer, fix what they called you for, and then look around and you'll find something that may not be quite right. Solve that and go tell the customer, oh, by the way, while I was here, I also took care of this. They'll love that. It's just like when you go get your oil changed. Someone says, oh, while you were here, I changed the light bulb for you that was out in your right tail light.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, thank you for that. I didn't even know it.
Yeah, that reminds me that, in China, right now, the food delivery service is very popular. And people always that the delivery guy usually will, when after the delivery, they took your food upstairs, gave you the food. Usually they take your garbage downstairs and throw it for you. That's the extra thing they would do.
That's a perfect, that's absolutely right. That's a good example. There are lots of examples of going the extra mile, but there's also examples where they don't. And people know that.
Mm-hmm.
And they later discover something, say, hey, I was just there. Why didn't they do that?
Yeah.
So you can really get a good edge in customer service and just generally relationships by going the extra mile.
Mm-hmm. And back to the bucket list, was climbing Kilimanjaro was the number 1 on the bucket list?
Yes, it was.
And what else were on the bucket list?
Well, traveling. For example, last year we went to France for 3 weeks, a bucket list item. Went to London the year before that for 2 weeks, bucket list item. So aside from my regular goals that I mentioned earlier, the gym, improv, and reading, they're my regular goals.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I would call them bucket lists because I look at bucket lists as something above and beyond what your regular goals are. As you can tell, I'm kind of goal driven. So usually lately in the past 10 years, bucket lists typically involve traveling somewhere.
Mm-hmm. And you did a lot of those.
Yes. Okay, here's the proof right here. I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro with my son at 71 years old, 9 years ago. And this is what you get for it, this little piece of paper.
How did you feel?
Oh my gosh. The number 1 physical accomplishment of my life. And I did have to prepare about 6 months of intense training to get in the condition to be able to do it. And even then, you can't train for no oxygen. You can do running and it helps a little bit, but in the end, it's really challenging. Not so much the muscular aspect of it, but breathing, oxygen, thin air.
Did you have to climb any other smaller mountains before this?
My son and I did Mount Whitney twice. First time I was 55 years old. The second time I was 65. Whitney is the highest peak in the lower 48 states. So that was our training. Okay, so we did that twice, accomplished the summit both times, and then we said after that, what do we do next? Kilimanjaro.
Wow.
It's probably the highest you can do without technical climbing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And what would you say is the biggest achievement in your life?
Well, I look at 2 answers. My biggest emotional achievement was the prison work that I did down at Donovan. That was very challenging emotionally. Physically, Kilimanjaro was the most challenging thing I've ever done physically. 6 days to get up the mountain to the summit and 2 days to come down.
And do you have any regrets in your life?
Well, when I was very, very young, a teenager, I was into theater in school and I did a lot of theater work. But when I joined the Navy, I thought that would be a temporary adventure, and then when I got out, I would go back to theater. Well, I never went back into theater until very recently, and even now, I'm doing a little bit of theater. I just love theater, and that's what I really want to do. And when I say theater, anything, stage manager, behind the scenes. I never thought of myself as on stage, but more likely in the production aspect of theater. So my only regret is I didn't really follow that dream. And I'm wondering how many human beings had a dream when they were 15 and never really did that. They did something else.
So would you imagine yourself being a theater as your professional?
Absolutely. I can see that very vividly, even now.
On the stage?
Yes. Anything around theater. I was lucky enough to be invited to join a team that wrote a musical right here in San Diego. We wrote a musical, big team, like 10 people, wrote a musical, performed it 9 times. I was the co-writer and stage manager for the musical. In fact, we're having a reunion at my house the end of this month of all the people that were in that production.
Would you play yourself as well?
I was not in it. I was not on stage. I was a stage manager managing all the details and also a co-writer of some of the songs.
Have you tried being an actor
Yes,
on the stage?
I have.
How was the experience?
It's okay, but I always find myself getting a bigger reward out of being behind the scenes. The same way in Toastmasters. That's me. I'm the helper guy in the back, the coach, as opposed to being on stage. It's not that I can't do it. It's just my preference would be to help you rather than do it myself. Okay, so for many years, I was what's called a master or senior runner. I would run 5K, 5-kilometer races. All over the county, I would usually do 6 to 8 races a year. And because there weren't that many people my age running, I would often place in the top 3 in terms of time. Here's an example of a trophy. This is Coronado, which happens around the 4th of July every year. So this is a trophy for the Coronado race that I believe I won in my age bracket not that long ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago.
What was your age range?
Probably at that time it would have been 70 to 75 or so in that bracket. I have all kinds of ribbons from races all over the place. They're all from placing. Race for Autism, usually my first race of the year. This is 2020, not that long ago. Race for Autism. So I would often get these medallions at the end for finishing these races. And they're all over San Diego. This is the one that says second place, etc. So all of these and a lot more are scattered all over the place from competitive running.
Okay, so we have you shared your Toastmaster journey and also you shared your life journey, gave us a lot of insight and stories. And lastly, I have a few questions I borrowed from Tim Ferriss. One of the questions I already asked about the book was the top book that you recommend or influence you the most. And the next question I have is, what is one of the best or most worthwhile investment you have ever made? It could be money, it could be also be time or energy.
Well, I think of I've been working out regularly for 42 years. I joined the gym 42 years ago. So to me, going to the gym 5 days a week is an investment in me. If I'm going to accomplish anything, seems like I've got to treat my body reasonably well. And when you go to the gym, you also get your brain gets a workout as well. So as far as investments, I would say be active. Get involved with some regular program of activity. If the gym's a thing, that's great. Or walk. Do a lot of walking regularly. Do it regularly every day. if you can. Financial investments, I mean, that's a very personal thing in terms of where to invest. I have done okay in my investing life. Looking back, I probably could have done better. I've had a few brand new companies that went wow, and a few companies that folded. So I've had a mixed bag of that. Um, Other investments, my own education. I delayed that until I was 31 years old. And when the government said, hey, you've got money that's sitting in the bank waiting for you as a veteran to go to school, to go to college, I said, oh, okay. So I invested in myself again with school. Started at 31 years old, graduated at 35 years old.
What did you study?
Management, which is what I was doing at the time. So it fit right in. So invest in yourself from an informational point of view is another thing that I would recommend. What are you learning? What are you doing? What are you doing to improve the knowledge that you have? So there's 3 investments: physical, educational, financial. You got to have something going on in all 3. And there are probably a lot more.
I like it. Great categorizing. If you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, what would it say and why?
Well, I think it would say something like, be your best. What does that mean? It's that no matter what you know now or what you can do now, if you want to, you can be better at it. Now, you may say, I don't really want to be better or care to be better. That's okay. But if you do, you can be better at almost anything. If you're in business, you can be better at business. And when I say better, it's almost like an infinite journey. There is no end. CEOs can be better CEOs, for example. So you can be better, whether it's Toastmasters, I can be a better communicator, whether it's education, I can be more knowledgeable of subjects around me. Be your best.
Be your best.
Be your best.
And how has a failure or apparent failure set you up for later success? Or do you have a favorite failure?
Well, I've been married before and divorced. You can always say that marriage that doesn't work is a failure. The question really is, whenever you have a failure, what did I learn from this that I can now apply to the next chapter in my life? In relationships are always going to be a challenge. And you can always improve in your relationship, whether it's the relationship with your son, your spouse, your coworkers at work. All of those relationships can be improved if you want to. The question is, where do I start? Where do I begin? And my attitude nowadays is get a coach. A coach can see things. A coach can hear things. They have a different perspective. They don't necessarily have the ideas, but they know what questions to ask. And in the end, you probably know what the answers are. It's how do I implement those answers? I know how to be better. How do I be better?
Last question. What is an unusual habit or an absurd thing that you love?
I am probably a little too organized or too planned. And there are some things that I should probably just let happen and enjoy the moment, so to speak, as opposed to thinking through. And I think what happened is the Navy caused me to formulate a behavioral style that has me think of everything in a planned fashion. And to some extent, that's a good thing, but there are moments and times when just go with the flow. So I try to do enough improv to soften that, to help me appreciate that you don't have to plan everything in your life. Maybe it's okay just to go out in the world and let things happen.
So you don't like surprise party?
I have had surprise parties and they're okay. But if I'm doing the party, I'm more likely planning it out, every little detail.
I think that's all of my questions. Any final thoughts?
I think it's moments like these where you do some reflection that also help. In your life, you wonder, how am I doing? What's missing? How can I be better at something? So you need to look at those questions every once in a while, and it raises the idea that maybe there's something more I can do.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe those things that I do will make my life feel more complete and more accomplished, or I'll be a better human being.
Mm-hmm.
And it never ends. You just keep asking.
So my interview 10% really helped you.
Yes, always. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hey,
thank you, Jim. Thank you
been
so
great.
much.